on the last episode of the Keepsake box. The doorbell rang and Antonio went to retrieve our food. He passed me an egg roll. I opened my container and already knew that I would find my favorite, General Tso chicken with extra sauce, lo mein with no onions, and extra broccoli. I looked up to smile at Antonio. He was already smiling. I absolutely loved his smile. We talked about an assortment of things over dinner. We laughed. The conversation was easy and effortless, just as it was before. That's why I loved him. That's the Antonio that I had fallen in love with. Antonio looked back at the clock before addressing me. "It's 11 o'clock, little girl. Let's go to bed." I asked if we were going to bed or if we were going to sleep. Again, we both laughed. He said, "I love you, little girl. I'm never gonna love anybody the way I love you." I told him that I loved him as well. Antonio picked me up and walked me into his bedroom. I loved when he did that. Just then, the doorbell rang. Antonio and I exchanged glances. I could tell that he was genuinely confused about who would be visiting that time of night. Antonio told me to stay in the bedroom. He said that he would get rid of whoever was at the door. I did as he requested. Besides, I wanted to change into my lingerie before he came back into the bedroom. I changed clothes and seductively positioned myself on the bed. I was there for approximately 10 minutes before I started to become impatient. We had a busy morning ahead and hopefully a busy night. I needed Antonio to come to bed. I decided to investigate the cause of Antonio's delay. I grabbed my robe and walked towards the door. I heard voices. It sounded as if Antonio was arguing with someone. I should have stayed in the bedroom. I should have done what I was told. If I had the wits of a normal person, I would have, but my curiosity got the better of me. I often wonder if things would have transpired differently if I hadn't come out of the bedroom. Even more, I've wished a million times that I had stayed at home that night. I've also wondered if I was just meant to be there, like a greater power knew that I would need to have the good memories that we created that day. Or maybe it was karma. In any case, I can't take back what happened, as much as I wish I could. All good things come to an end. I tied my robe and walked out of the bedroom. As I got closer to the voices, a sinking feeling came over me. I knew something was wrong. I entered the living room to see two familiar faces. I locked eyes with Antonio first. There was something in his expression that made me feel panicked. He looked sad, maybe even scared. My eyes quickly made their way to the right, where I saw the second familiar face. She was angry and crying. She was my karma. She was Sharon. Chapter 23, The End. Narrated by Shandora Warren. My mind couldn't grasp an adequate assessment of the situation. I could have cut the tension with a knife. Both Sharon and Antonio stopped talking when I entered the room. Sharon turned to face me and started to laugh through her tears. It wasn't a laugh when something is actually funny. It was the universal sign of disbelief. "Unbelievable!" Sharon screamed. "I'm so sorry," I said. I tried to explain, but Sharon continued to laugh in the same sarcastic manner. She was shaking. It was incredibly scary. I hadn't ever seen that expression on her face, or anyone else's face for that matter. I continued to apologize. "Sharon, I am so sorry. We never meant for this to happen." Sharon looked at Antonio and then quickly turned her attention back to me. "Oh yeah?" she said. "You're dumber than I thought." Sharon looked back at Antonio and smiled as she addressed him. "Bae, you want to tell her? Or do you want me to?" I looked at Antonio. He had tears in his eyes. "Don't do this, Sharon," he said. "Just leave. We can talk about this later." I addressed him. "Antonio, what is she talking about?" He didn't answer. "Maybe you should have a seat," said Sharon. I told her that I'd prefer to stand. More forcefully, the second time, Sharon told me to sit down. I did as I was told. I needed to hear whatever she was about to say, as badly as she needed to say it. Antonio was positioned to my left, Sharon to my right. Antonio didn't offer any more resistance, fully aware that he couldn't catch the bomb that Sharon was about to drop. We both allowed her to speak, uninterrupted. The words that she uttered changed everything that I thought I knew. Sharon turned to me and began to speak. She said, "Let me start from the beginning, Londa. And trust me when I tell you that the beginning began long before you could have ever imagined. You say that you and Antonio never meant for this to happen? That's the biggest joke of the day. Maybe you thought it wasn't supposed to happen this way, but much of this was planned long ago. Everything started when your mom kicked you out of the house. As usual, you were needy, just as you always are. I saw that as my opportunity and I moved. I took you in with a plan in mind. The flaw in the plan came when you decided to move out and to move in with Ken. I tried to talk you out of it, but you had to go. You would have done anything for the love of a man. I guess some things never change. But as luck would have it, Ken got locked up. Once again, you were needy. And once again, I saw my chance. Understand that the situation between you and Antonio never got past me. In fact, I sent him to you. Do you remember when your car broke down in 1998? I was never too tired to pick you up. Do you really think I would trust you around my man after you willingly slept with your mom's husband and got pregnant? I sent him to you for a very specific reason. Why? Because I was you before you were you. I was Antonio's accountant, legal counsel, business partner, and confidant. The same way you worked the books is the same way that I worked the girls. Yep, that's right. Antonio and I set you up to get worked. The plan was for him to reel you in and get you to either strip in the club or get you into the escort business, either of which would have been lucrative for us. That's what it was supposed to be. That's what you were worth to him. But things started going into a different direction. Every time I asked about the status of the operation, Antonio would tell me that he was working on it. I knew something was wrong. I sensed the change. Suddenly, he was spending more time with you, buying you more, taking you places. I knew the signs. I had phased Cream out that exact same way. I took a step back to see how Antonio was going to handle stuff. Of course, he disappointed me, because that's what he does. I asked him to choose, and he refused. All the while, he was insisting that I remain loyal to him. I felt so stupid. I was loyal to a man who basically told me that he did not have the ability to be faithful to anyone. So I did what I had to do. I called his probation officer to tell her that Antonio was smoking marijuana, and it was assured that he would not be able to pass his drug test. When nothing happened, I called a supervisor. I'm sure you both still think that his regular officer just went away. Maybe that's messed up, but it was worth it to me. If I wasn't going to be happy with him, you certainly were not either. As a bonus, I could reclaim the businesses while he was gone. That would have worked out just fine. But unbeknownst to me, Antonio had signed all of the businesses over to you. You! Do you know how angry and humiliated I was? Do you know how it felt to watch you take my place? It was bad enough watching Antonio water my seeds, but you didn't deserve to be there. You didn't deserve to benefit from what I had worked hard for. Making matters worse, my salon got burned down because you and Peaches were too stupid to run a business that was fully functioning when it was handed over to you. Yet, Antonio forgave you. Meanwhile, I had to watch you still handle the businesses and live the life while I did hair out of my salon. That just wasn't fair. I talked to Antonio, and we agreed to work things out. I picked him up from the prison when he was released. I dropped him off with the expectation that he was going to end things with you. He promised that he would, and I believed him. Everything was fine. He was putting in his time, and he promised to purchase another salon for me. It was stupid, but I believed him. But over the course of the last week or so, something changed. Antonio was distant, cold even. I knew the signs. I knew there was somebody else. I know that man. This morning, I woke up in the same bed that you were about to sleep in. I made that man breakfast. That man told me that he loved me and sent me on my way. Not 2 hours later, that man called me and told me that he couldn't be with me anymore. He didn't talk to me face to face. He didn't offer any explanations. He just told me that he was letting me go, as if I were an employee. That's all I meant to him. I came here tonight to do one of two things. I wanted to either fix what was broken or finally find a way to let go. If I had come here tonight and found that Antonio just didn't want me, I could have handled that. I made up my mind that I would let go if that's what he really wanted. I came here for closure either way. I deserve that. But instead of closure, I found you. You. The person who I gave a place to stay. The person who I allowed to work at my salon, even though you neglected the responsibility over and over and over again. The person who I provided transportation for at the expense of my own convenience. The person who took everything that should have been mine. And now you both want me to just leave? Like I didn't give you both everything that you ever wanted and needed, including each other? Just leave? Nah, I don't think so. I looked at Antonio. He and I were both crying. He looked incredibly sad. But in a split second, the sadness in his eyes turned to horror. "What are you doing?" he screamed. My eyes traveled to the right. There, Sharon stood, her face saturated with tears. My eyes traveled down and saw that she was holding a gun. The whole event played out in slow motion. It was like a theatrical event. Antonio and I both begged Sharon to put the gun down. In the coldest, most inauspicious tone, Sharon said, "You've taken everything away from me, Antonio. Now, I'm going to take everything away from you." It all happened so quickly, yet so slowly. There was nothing I could do to change Sharon's mind. She wanted me dead, and a small part of me didn't blame her. I closed my eyes to prepare for the inevitable. I vividly recall every single second. I heard Antonio screaming, "No!" I heard the sound of the bullet leaving the chamber. I smelled the smoke. I felt the heavy sensation of something hitting my chest. I smelled the blood. I tasted it in my mouth. I felt it on my skin. I opened my eyes and saw the shock and sadness on Sharon's face. I heard her voice. I've replayed it in my mind so many times. She was screaming, "What did I do? What did I do?" Sharon placed the gun against her right temple. She uttered 3 words. "You did this." She pulled the trigger. Sharon's body fell to the floor. I watched helplessly as each individual fragment of her skull separated from the one adjacent. I turned my head to the left, searching for Antonio. He wasn't there. I looked down and saw that he was resting on my chest. Bloodied and motionless, his body slid to the floor, a bullet hole prominently displayed between his eyes. It was in that moment that I realized something. Intentionally or unintentionally, Antonio had taken that bullet from me. I jumped into action. I started searching his pockets for a cell phone. I hoped that against all odds he could be saved. Antonio was wearing gray sweatpants. They were saturated with his blood. I searched his left pocket, to no avail. I slid my hand into his right pocket. There was no cell phone. There was, however, a beautiful platinum princess cut engagement ring. My engagement ring. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Shenny Tells a Story on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in purchasing books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and some in hardback formats. Thank you for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Shine, little girl.